Hey everyone, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're dialing from. So I'm Shashi from Profit.co. So I'll be hosting this webinar. So I'm so glad to have you all here in the webinar. So before getting into the session, I'll take a quick 30 seconds to introduce Profit.co. So have you ever thought about like how great companies like Apple, Amazon, or Google made success a habit? So it's not just ambition or vision, like it's the way like they consistently bring three elements together. They build great plans, they execute them through solid systems and process, and they empower high performing people. In fact, the real magic happens when they align these three things and they make these three things work perfectly in sync. And that's exactly what Profit.co is built for. Profit.co is an AI powered strategy execution platform that helps companies create great plans, execute them with streamlined process, and empower people to become high performers. Profit has 1,500 customers globally, including 50 of the Fortune 500 companies. So now let's get to the star of today's webinar, our amazing speaker, Tim Newbold. So Tim is a well-known OKR coach, is very popular in the Australia region, and he's also founder of OKR Quick Start. So for nearly 15 plus years, he's been mentoring leaders in top companies like Domino's, Seat, Car Sales. So he's helping those leaders to execute their strategy seamlessly and faster. And when I spoke to Tim, he said like he's very passionate about making team focus on what really matters, and that way he helps them achieve great things in companies. So today, Tim is going to help us show like how to execute strategy faster, how to keep up momentum with OKRs, and how to drive long-term success. So over to you, Tim.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the introduction there. Team, I am super pumped to get started today. I've just done a quick change on my slides. I've got a very quick story to kick off with. So let me get it started. I don't think you need to hear much more about me. Yeah, basically been working with a lot of companies over the years. I'll share some of our customers with you. Today is really exciting though. This is all about getting our teams behind the OKR, getting them inspired to be successful and really getting them drive incredible outcomes. So bear with me while I get my screen shared. Lovely to see the interaction here. We're seeing a few comments there. Team, this is a bit of a ask of you. So today is a interactive workshop. This is not a webinar, though it's called a webinar. We're definitely going to be making this a live interactive session. So I want to make sure everyone's engaged and with me here. If you're all cool to get started, can you just drop a yep in the comments and I'll know that we're all good to go and I'm coming through loud and clear. So 3, 2, 1, drop it in the comments. Are we good to go? Yep, excellent. Looks like everyone's coming through. Is anyone not good to go? Anyone having any issues or technical help? Because we've got a few people from Profit Co here that can help along the sidelines. No? All right, let's do this, team. So my screen should be shared. I think we're good to go. This is a photo of me literally half an hour ago. We have an ongoing leak in my house. So I was in my ceiling. I've had to have a shower since then and reset. Very good to be here. I would not have missed this for the world, but I'm glad I could also work out the source of the leak. Successfully found the source of the leak. So that's my evening's turned up well. It is, what is it? Just after 9 o'clock here. So very quickly, we're formed to share the leading techniques and practices of companies who focus on outcomes and make an impact. As Sussy was sharing earlier, really the most successful companies in the world have embedded OKR, and the reason they selected it is it allowed them to focus on the most critical thing right now and really empower their teams to be successful. Now, it's one thing to set goals, but then really what we want to talk about is how do we embed that in our team and be really successful with it. What I'm bringing to you today is a set of lessons from working with loads of different companies from around the world. Founder Magazine is a really incredible company. They interview some of the world's leading entrepreneurs like Richard Branson. They've got a series of courses and different things. There's Domino's. I don't know if you've come across Domino's, but a pretty big pizza organization sort of scattered all over the globe, and a whole host of other businesses. So today what I'm sharing with you is a bit of the secret sauce from them. Now, in fact, whoops, you can jump on this poll that I'm about to share here. I just want to get a bit of a sense for where is everyone today in terms of their OKR journey. So I'll pop the link in the chat again. This is the Slido poll. Just join that and let me know where you are. Are you just starting out? Is this something really new to you? Are you about to start? Sorry, are you not started? You're about to start. Are you running a pilot? So maybe you've started, but it's just one team, and maybe it's not a formal pilot, but you're just giving it a bit of a go. Maybe you're rolling it out, so you're midway through the journey, or you're actually just already embedded OKRs and you're trying to improve. So jump into the poll and just let me know where you are sitting today. And again, in the chat, if you are having any issues with Slido, let me know. You can either QR code it or you can go to slido.com. Here we go, we've got people responding. So running a pilot. But yeah, if you're having issues joining, go to slido.com and put in the code OKR. That will let you join this poll. Again, this is going to be an interactive workshop, so you definitely want to be filling these things out. Unless you're an AI bot, in which case we'll let you off the Slido. We'll let you off the hook this time. Okay, so a few people about to start running a pilot and trying to improve. Come on, team. We've got more. We've got 29 people here. This is going to be the session, by the way. So you want to be interacting and dropping in on this. Don't be sitting on the sidelines. Okay, so a few people are not started. Excellent. So here's where I'm going to be playing this today. I'm going to try and cover all the bases because I think there's people who are just starting out, it looks like, and exploring OKRs. There's others that have really embedded it and doing it really well. So I'll make sure that we cover all the bases depending where you are. Again, we've only got 6 respondents so far. We need to get more, team. Do better and be part of this conversation because it is a live workshop. Don't feel like you've got to be sitting behind the scenes. All right. Pilot, fantastic. Okay, we're going to make this gold for the pilot people. Okay, so where does OKR all go wrong? Like everyone, I'm getting on. I don't know if you've seen this on the socials, but the ChatGPT Ghibli anime creations. I think it's pretty cool. So I want to use this for a little bit of a story, but it's a common situation that we see across a lot of our customers. So they've got OKRs that are really great push into setting OKRs for the first time. So this first quarter, they set their OKRs, they're ready to go, and nothing seems to be moving. The team is really busy. There's lots of requests coming in. There's lots of noise. The problem is, though, is that they don't feel like they're making progress. Now, the manager, she sits down, she's looking at the numbers. She's looking at the OKRs and the metrics, and she cannot see them moving at all. She has all the usual health metrics or KPIs that she's meant to be tracking, and they're not moving at all. And she starts to wonder why. What's going on here? And a lot of this comes down to how well the team is tracking and embedding their OKRs. And this is what I want to unpack with you today. The typical situations that I see where she's going to be running into this challenge is what we call the 4 sins of OKR indifference. So first, the team is too distracted, right? They've got other priorities coming in. They've got requests coming in from different people. We weren't really committed to driving the outcome. We're just doing what we're told, right? And this is one thing that, again, for those that are new, we've got other videos that I can share with you where we can talk a bit more about what OKR is and what it's intended to do. And I'll talk a bit more about what it is in a moment, just to give everyone a bit of a 101 on it. But really, we're talking about an outcome we're trying to make. We're trying to make a measurable impact rather than just doing the stuff that we're getting asked to do as a team. So if we're just having requests come in and we're too busy and there's always a fire to put out, maybe if you're a technical team, servers are going down, all these kind of things, they're not going to be able to focus on their OKR. Number 2 is it's the wrong OKR. Now that means that they've picked the wrong thing to work on. Now your check-ins are going to help you pick up on this, but they're not going to solve it for you. So if you're too distracted, it's going to focus on when we're talking about our OKR, it's going to bring you back to it. And if we've got the wrong OKR, it's going to really call that out. And we're going to go, we have the wrong OKR. We better fix this. People don't believe in the OKR or the mission itself. So they either don't think that this is the right OKR. So maybe it is the right OKR, but they're not behind it, or they don't believe in the mission of the team. Again, these weekly check-ins can actually be used to pick this up and pick out these sort of issues. And finally, the team lacks a level of curiosity. And this is a big one that I'm going to unpack. These are the things where you see OKR not working. When I hear teams come to me and they're having issues with OKRs, it's usually down to one of these issues. And this might mean that, again, they've got too many OKRs. Like, I'm going to be talking to you about having one OKR today, but if they're too distracted, they've got too many OKRs. But these are the things as where it falls off the rails. So what happens if we can solve for all of this? Well, everyone's happy and laughing and it's a really great time. So we're all very excited and everything's going really well. That's where I want to get you all to the end of today. Whether you're on a pilot, whether you're thinking about doing it, if you're just starting out and you haven't actually run your first OKR cycle yet, we're going to avoid you any of the pain and suffering that others might go through. For anyone else, we're going to get you fixing this. Now, Sahar, I can see you said you didn't get it. I'll just post the link again. You might have joined at a strange moment. You don't need to jump into the Slido right now because we're going to come back to that in a moment. All right, let's continue. So, firstly, a very quick OKR overview. I'm going to breeze through these slides because, again, this session is about the check-ins. It's not about OKRs themselves, but I want to make sure we all know why we're here. So firstly, let's have a quick chat about why OKRs. We've mentioned before, it's about focus and getting really clear on what we're trying to achieve. And it's a lot of the big tech firms like Google and Facebook that popularized it. It started out Intel back in the 1970s. And in fact, the 1960s. It expanded Intel in the 1970s. And since then, a lot of the people that were using OKRs at Intel to beat Motorola during the chip wars, which was, I think, something where you can see not too many computers now have Intels inside. Have Motorola's inside, so you can see it worked out pretty well for Intel. But it wasn't until really the people who were working and leading Intel left the organization and started doing venture capital type work. And that's when they started taking the concepts of OKRs to Google and Facebook and all these sort of organizations, LinkedIn. And that's really, the rest is history. So why do they find it so valuable? Well, it helps you obsess about customer impact and outcomes. Now, whether you're a product team building features, new services, or just improving the customer experience, or you're an internal team that's trying to be really operationally as efficient as you can be. So maybe you're trying to improve how quickly you can do certain tasks. Maybe the finance team trying to reduce how long it takes you to complete your end of month. All these sort of things along the way will help improve the customer experience. If you're operating more efficiently, it means that you're going to be able to offer products and services at a cheaper, more valuable price point for the customer. Or if you're improving the customer experience, you're going to be able to deliver those great customer experiences. So no matter what we're doing, we're actually able to have an impact on the customer experience. Now, often we talk about alignment. We have an OKR at the top of the organization, the executive team sets, and all the teams align their OKRs to that. They see how they can feed in and contribute to that company OKR. Very, very powerful. They also align across the business. So you get this sort of vertical alignment to the top, but also this horizontal alignment across the organization. So everyone's marching in lockstep to drive the same outcome. It is incredibly powerful when you see it happen. And of course, unlike most traditional goals, OKRs are very public. Teams share their OKR, so everyone's crystal clear on what is happening. The next is we're measuring real progress. So we've got good key results with really clear metrics. I'll talk about that as well in just a moment with a real example. Again, I don't want to go too deep into this. Now, bringing this back to the weekly check-in, and I'm going to have to start talking about what it is. So I've mentioned it quite a few times, but the check-in is where you get together your team to pressure test your progress, right? How are you going on your OKR? And this is where the absolute game-changing piece here is focus with directional autonomy. What we're doing is we're saying, here's where we want to get to at the end of a quarter. But every week we're checking in together to make sure we're making that progress and holding ourselves accountable. And if the plans that we had aren't working, we're not actually seeing the numbers move. Because again, the key results usually will have a metric that's a number and we're able to see that number move. If we're not being successful, it gives us opportunity to pause and go back to the drawing board to work out, is this the right plan? Now, OKR, think of it as a means to execute on your strategy. A lot of people mix up OKR with strategy. Don't do that. OKR isn't your strategy. Your strategy is your unique flight path to win. Maybe it's over the medium term or the longer term. In this case, we want to set up a civilization on Mars. Our flight path is our strategy, how we're going to get there. But that's too big and lofty for people to understand. So we need to break it down into small, valuable slices. And that's what our OKRs are all about, fixing one problem at the time. We can see here, this is just about getting into the stratosphere. I could talk more about this, but I'm going to move on because today is not about a 101 on OKRs. But here's an example OKR. You can see your objective: make our customers our biggest advocates. It's inspiring, exciting. You could almost read it a bit like a newspaper headline if you write it really well. Your key results have really clear metrics. So again, focus on this one. We got create a better experience. We want to have the conversion rate increase from 5% to 7%. We've got a very clear starting metric where we are at the start of the quarter, and we've got a target we want to get to at the end. We know what report we're using to pull that information, because we're not just going to make it up, right? We're not scribbling it on the back of a napkin. We need to know, what are we actually trying to achieve? And we know the stuff we're going to do to make that happen, right? The initiatives, the work, all those sort of great things. Okay, that's the 101 on OKRs. Let's now talk about the check-in. Here's a key thing we need to be thinking about with our teams. Too often we see teams not thinking about the work that they're trying to achieve. They're not owning the outcomes. We don't have levels of inquiry where we're actually trying to explore, what are we trying to achieve here? So we use the check-ins to really help connect the team with what matters and why, but also get them curious about the problem they're solving. Now, there's 5 levels to this, and I'm going to start with a little bit of a story. When I was working at a large Australian bank, I was part of a large team building a mobile app. We had quite a few teams involved, and I turned up to one of the other team's stand-ups. And this is back in the early days of mobile app development. It's a very different beast now, but this is sort of a bit like the cowboy days back when we were starting out. And we had we had a testing team that had been effectively as an outsourced testing team. So I was observing the stand-up, and the tester came into the stand-up and they said, I completed testing tickets 247, and I'll pick the next one up in the queue today. And everyone's just gone, okay, cool, move on to the next person. The next person said basically the same thing. I've finished story 265, I'll pick up another one today. And no one had any context around what they were working on. No one actually knew what those numbers meant. They were referring the user story numbers, but it just meant there was a level of confusion, and people were therefore not really inquiring, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? They were just following the bouncing ball. They weren't challenging how we worked. We weren't trying to be more outcome focused. They were just really doing what we call surface level inquiry. So it's just really just turning up and doing the thing. Now, typically teams don't stay in this state for too long unless you've got some cultural challenges, or it's a really junior team. Junior teams will typically, if you've got, maybe it's a few grads or something, they're going to read a video guide on how to do something and they're just going to follow the bouncing ball. They're not going to try and do it differently. But if you've got teams that operate in that territory, people aren't speaking up, people aren't challenging, then you know that they're just sitting at that sort of just turn up and just do the job sort of mode. We want to fix that. Next is they want to start understanding the how. So once you move past that service level of inquiry, they start thinking about how they work. And if any of you have worked in agile environments or agile software development, this is really that sort of realm. You're starting to look at, okay, how do we work? How do we improve? How do we be more efficient? If we get through a piece of work, maybe building a new feature, how do we do that quicker? How do we do that better? How do we do that more reliably? You're still not really thinking about the customer outcome though. Agile talks a lot about the customer, but in practice, you don't see a lot of that connection with the customer. Eventually, we start thinking about the why. Why are we doing this? Why is this important to the customer? And we start making small efforts to try and drive customer outcomes. We don't tie the customer in too much. We are starting to think about them though. Maybe we have the odd sort of customer conversation. Maybe we try out something called a design sprint. But we're still quite insular. We're not really thinking about why do we do this work. If you're a finance team and you're doing the end of month, you're not really thinking about, well, why do we do it this way? Why is there a better sort of, maybe financial standard to follow or something like that? You're really still sort of just doing the work and making sure your processes work really well. And you might be thinking a little bit, okay, is there something a little bit different we can try? You're not going to be really trying to shake the boat too much though. So that's where we get curious about the why, but we don't really go to the fundamentals and start changing things too much. We then have systemic inquiry. Now, this is where we start examining the problem space. We start going, okay, what are we here to achieve? If we start talking to our teams, for a product team, you start looking at the customer, looking at the customer journey, understanding, well, okay, could we try some things out to improve this? If we're trying to create an outcome which might be increase that conversion rate, well, what happens if we change a few things? You know, if it's a registration form, what if we tweak that a little bit? What does that mean? And maybe we make it faster. Is that good for the customer experience? Probably. But what does that mean as a subsequent step? Does that mean the customers are now less invested in our product because it was easier to sign up, or are they happier because it was a great experience? So all of a sudden you start becoming curious about the problem you're trying to solve. This is where you see teams starting to pick up something called the product operating model, which is very popular in the States for their software companies. But it's really starting to move into how do you really think and obsess about the customer. I'm going to bring this back to OKR check-ins in just a moment, but go with me here. We're talking about levels of inquiry. How curious are the team? Ultimately, you hit transformational inquiry. And this is where you really, as a team, start reflecting on the customer experience, the impact you make, but also start challenging the strategy. Start coming up with what are the underpinning assumptions behind our strategy that might not be true? Where do we need to start doing bigger, broader tests as an organization? Start doing strategic bets. And as an organization, you start talking about things a little bit differently. At each layer, it is less and less insular to the team. This surface level is very much focused on just my team and I'm just here. I don't want to talk to anyone else. I just want to do the ticket and let me get my job done. Up here, we're really going through the customer experience and we're focusing on a bit as a team, of course, as well. However, we're thinking more globally. How do we work better as a team? Now, the OKR check-in is a way for us to step through these phases. There's many different parts to it. It's not the only way. It's not the only thing you can do. But the OKR check-in will help us start thinking about, well, okay, why are we doing this work? It takes us to this sort of level here. You know, if we're thinking about how we work quite well, we can jump to why are we doing this work with OKRs and talk about that regularly as a team on a weekly basis. We can then start to look into, okay, how do we actually know that this is making an impact for the customer? Can we do smaller tests and make smaller bets? And that's where the magic really starts to come out. So let's talk about what the weekly check-in actually is. We're just about halfway through this and I haven't even actually gone into what it is, but I want to set the context of why this is important and why it should matter to you. So we have something called the OKR operating rhythm. Again, we're not here to talk today about this. Feel free to grab some screenshots of this. We've actually got a QR code at the end where you can get a bunch of my resources as well, which you're free to take and use as you please. But basically, this talks about what are some of the common things that you follow as part of an OKR setting cycle. Over here, we have the OKR reset where we're scoring, we're reviewing the previous quarter, we're considering the quarter ahead, we're sharing that with our team so they can set their goals. And there's this whole sort of alignment piece. What we're really talking about today, though, is this little wheel over here. I want you to imagine this is your little bit of a turbo spinner on the wheel of OKRs. It really drives and accelerates them because it helps us keep that weekly pulse. Now, the reason why this is important, teams often tell me checking in my OKR is a waste of time. You know, there's too many things going on, or I have too many OKRs to get through. So that's another problem, right? You've got too many OKRs. You can't talk about it efficiently nor meaningfully on a regular basis. So they say, look, we just set the OKRs and we hope for the best. Now, if you're trying to hit a target, right? If you don't check in on it, you only set your OKRs and just hope for the best, there's no chance you're going to hit it, right? No matter what you do, unless you're very lucky or you just set a very low bar, you're not going to be successful because you're actually not working towards it as a team. Everyone's just doing their own thing and hoping they get there. If you check in a few times, once a month, let's say, well, let's say you miss one of those check-ins because, you know, a few people are sick or there's a public holiday. Before you know it, you've only got 1 or 2 check-ins for a whole quarter. Maybe you can get a little bit of the way of where you're trying to head to, but you're still just not going to have that honed in focus. What you want to do is turn your team into a heat-seeking missile. And this is where you have your weekly check-ins so you can quickly talk about the progress of the OKRs and course correct as needed where you feel like you're not making that progress. So why do it? You want to feel the progress. When you talk every week, you can actually get a sense for here's the progress we're making and here's where we're celebrating, and here's why it works. You're feeling those tangible steps. You're talking about here's what we're doing for the next week to make progress. You're able to inspect and adapt where if you're not making progress, you're able to pause, replan, and then move forward. And for a team lead, because I'm sure a few of you, in fact, can just drop in the comment a bit of a yes or a why, probably easier. If you're a team lead or a head of or an executive, anyone here who's running a team or leading people, can you just put a Y in the comments? I'm curious how many of you are versus team members. If you're a team member, you can just put nothing or N. Yeah, so we've got 1. Any other team leaders, executive, heads of, anyone with a team that reports into them? Okay, yep. Got a couple, not too many. Cool. Well, for all of you that don't run a team, this is still very powerful for you because you're able to communicate the success to your people leader and help them bubble that up. One thing I'll say is I've always found when I've been running teams, being able to see the progress and track that on a weekly basis and being able to communicate that out is insanely powerful because the confidence it builds in the people around you and the senior leadership is game changing. Let's continue. So here's what the format looks like. So really, we're going to cover 3 topics as part of our weekly check-in. The first is over the past week, and this is where we basically look at our OKR. If you've got a tool like Profit.co, fantastic. It's probably one of the better ways to do it. If not, I've got a spreadsheet you can do it in, which is a cheap and nasty way of getting started. I wouldn't suggest doing it for too long. But basically you want to sit down and you look at your OKRs and you go, okay, for each key result, what did we do over the past week to move the needle on this? We talk about all of that progress that we've made. We look at, has the metric actually changed as well? So we want to talk about, here's the stuff we did and here's how the numbers changed. Maybe the numbers didn't change at all. Maybe you're still doing work, you're planning discoveries, whatever it might be, you're not actually getting those impacts out into the market, and that's fine. But you want to have that conversation. Next, we're going to talk about our confidence for each key result. I'm going to unpack what that means in a minute, but you're basically scoring each key result on how likely do you think we are to hit that key result. So we're talking about the progress, we're talking about our confidence, and then we're talking about here's the plan for the week ahead. Now, in particular, we want to talk about here's how we're actually going to really accelerate the lower confidence ones. If we feel like we are stuck on a couple of key results or there's blockers, we're going to talk about here's how we unblock those. So that is how we do our weekly check-in. And again, it's about maintaining that momentum. I want you to try and avoid making a new meeting for this though. Hopefully as a team, you've got either if you're a software team, you might have sprint planning. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Or if you're an executive team, you've got your weekly executive meeting, or if you're any other team, you've probably got some sort of regular team meeting. Bring it into that. Don't do an additional meeting if you can avoid it. Imagine meetings are kind of like taking out loans at the bank, and you keep on taking too many loans, you're going to go bankrupt. So try and find an existing meeting you can use to embed as your OKR check-in. If you don't have any meetings, probably something else going on there, but if you don't have a meeting that really fits the bill for this, think about how you can remove or reduce other meetings that don't fit quite right into this to create your OKR check-in. You'll hear me bang on that about that a bit. Don't add more meetings. If you're an executive team, so if you're thinking about, or if this is a pilot and you can see benefit for your executive team, keep this in mind because it's really powerful for when it's time to start introducing OKRs to them. So first, this is really what we call a weekly executive committee or a weekly impact meeting is what we call it. Most executive teams meet on a weekly basis. And I've seen some great meetings and I've seen some meetings that really, really suck. So this one is a bit of a recipe for something that works really well in my experience. So first we do a bit of a casual kickoff, right? We get started, bit of a welcome, share some wins. Sometimes can be personal wins, nothing too formal. What we want to do is be able to get through all our key topics really quickly and have a robust discussion. So you can see this part of the agenda is really quite intentional. We talk about our health metrics or key performance indicators, KPIs, if you come from that world. Here's the numbers we need to be tracking. And those are the things that are telling you, is the business running okay? They're not your OKRs, they're just the numbers that tell you, is everything okay? Your OKR check-in is when we talk about everything we just spoke about. So you've got your progress, your current metrics, your confidence, and the focus for the week ahead. So we do that same sort of format. Now, if there's a problem or you're stuck or you think we need to have a deeper conversation about some of the key results, pause that. That's going to come later in this discussion. This is just a quick update. The reason is I don't want to get caught up on, let's say the health metric review. We realize, geez, our customer retention rate has dropped all of a sudden. And then we get caught up discussing that and miss all the other important things during that day. Anything we talk about here needs to be saved as a topic for later. So we have our check-in, we could do our knockout round, which is any other business, anything else that people feel like they need to shout out and share, we get into that at that one there. Now that we've covered everything, we probably have a few different topics that have come up through the health metric review, the OKR check-in, and the knockout round. We're going to come up with a few things we need to discuss. So now we prioritize what do we need to talk about today. So we sequence those topics, most important to least important. We discuss each of those topics. Now you can do something where you limit a time box to it, maybe 5 minutes, and you get to the end of that 5 minutes. Okay, do you want to keep talking about it? Thumbs up. I don't care, or I'm over it, move on to the next one. You can use those kind of activities, or you can just keep it a little bit casual, whatever works for you and your team. Once we've had that conversation, we capture any actions, and that's where we act, right? Prioritize, discuss, act. Make sure that any sort of discussion has some sort of action, decision, or communication that comes off the back of it. And finally, we wrap. Be really clear on what actions we're taking away from today. And that is the executive team's recipe for success. Anyone here part of a software development team? Or anyone want me to go through the sprint planning with OKRs? Because if not, I'm not going to go too deep into it. Drop a comment in the chat. Need some kind of waiting music. Sure. Okay, cool. We got one. So I'm going to touch on it because I think, this is going to be recorded. So anyone who catches up on the recording, probably good for them. But okay, here we go. So OKRs as part of sprint planning. I literally had someone say to me the other day, OKRs don't work with product teams. And I'm like, every organization that used OKRs in the early days was a product team. We work with like flooring businesses and all sorts of really weird businesses now. Our heart is still software and tech. But other businesses are taking on now. But anyone who says that it isn't for software product teams, they're losing their mind. OKR is such a critical part of it because it is about being very clear around what we're trying to achieve and the impact we're trying to have. So part of sprint planning is getting together as a team and working out how do we want to collaborate on progressing our goals for the quarter. It's a plan for them to be able to self-organize and work out here's the next few steps and here's who's doing what, right? And that's what the idea of sprint planning is. And this is why it works so well with OKR. If we think about how it fits in with an example agenda here as part of sprint planning. Again, sprint planning is just the team getting together to work out what are they doing for the sprint, and that might be 1 or 2 weeks. I'll leave it up to you based on your team. And I'm not going to read through all this, by the way. You take a screenshot of this if you're a software team. This is a bit of a guide for you to use. So at the start of the sprint planning, we talk about the key achievements. What are the key achievements we've made? We talk about the confidence. So it's a pretty similar format to what we do in all other team meetings that are using OKRs. And we agree on what are the focus points. So it's a little bit different. We're not going, here's the initiatives or here's the stuff we're going to do. We just agree what's the focus for the next 2 weeks, the priorities for the next 2 weeks in terms of problems to solve or the metrics we want to move over the next 2 weeks or the rest of the sprint. Now, where we talk about the work to be done comes in just a moment. We're going to talk about how much capacity we have. Is there any planned leave? Is there any public holidays? Is there anything else we need to be aware of? Maybe someone's sick and we know that we're going to have less capacity. Based on the capacity, based on the goals for the week, we can then choose, here's the stuff from the product backlog. And again, if you're not a tech team, I'm sorry, this might be talking a bit of detail that is foreign to you, but that's okay. It's basically your backlog is just all the stuff you need to do to work on your product. And you might use OKRs to pick out the few things that you need to focus on. Now, that includes also any task you need to do. Maybe it's discovery work. Maybe it's a whole new feature that you hadn't thought of before because, from the last sprint, you learned something new. So that might even come up as part of this. But really, you want to add those items in. You're going to add any tasks in. And before we wrap up on our sprint planning, we now know what the goal is. We know how we're progressing on our OKRs. And we also have a plan of the stuff we need to do because we know who's away and what's happening, right? We know we've got how much capacity. So we do a final check. Before the meeting ends, we go, right, is everyone cool? Are we happy with what we've got planned for the next sprint? And if everyone's saying yes, then we're good to rock and roll, get to it, and team gets started. So OKR fits into all these meetings. I'm curious, what has been valuable for people so far? I'm going to play some music so I can take a breath. What's been the biggest learning for you so far? And is my Australian accent making sense or am I speaking too fast? Because I can tone it down if needed. Drop your thoughts in the poll for anyone who might have joined us a little bit late. I can see there's a few more. Just copy that in. You can click on that link, or you can use the QR code, or you can go to slido.com. Okay. Very great definition with a bit of music, and let us know.
Keep my hands on myself. Pick out dust them off, put them back up on the shelf. Kiss my little baby girl is in need.
That is not good.
Am I coming out of left field?
How's the audio, team? Is the audio also a little bit breaky?
I've been feeling
The music?
it since 1966 now. Might be over now, but I feel it still.
Better now.
Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now.
Okay.
Feel like it's nothing in
Keep in the chat, team. If it's not working for you, let me know and I'll try and see what I can do to fix it.
got another mouth to feed.
It's back. That's good. All right. So what are the comments we've got so far? The point about OKR score has been interesting. We would like to know how to define OKR score at group level and an individual level. We'll talk about that. Excellent. The pace and accent is good. Overall importance of OKR, the whole presentation, weekly impact meetings with executive teams, knowing more about OKR implementation. Love it. All right, Profit.co team, I'm going to hold you accountable. Let me know if my voice does go a little bit funky again and I can try some magic on my side. All right, I think that's a good couple of ones. Let's just wait, one or two more coming.
Back to my hopes and dreams. Stop flipping for my enemies. We could wait until the walls come down.
My watch has gone into sleep mode. It thinks I'm in bed. It's certainly not the case. There we go. Crisp and good highlights about OKRs, knowing more about OKR implementation. Cool. All right, there's one straggler there, but I think we're going to keep moving ahead, team, in the interest of time. So let's get into what is a confidence score. Now, team, we talked about, and some of the questions, a great question was, how do we do a confidence score at a group level? I might need you to help me articulate that a little bit better, just depending on your context, but I'll try and answer as part of this. So, firstly, how does a confidence score help your execution? I'm not even going to talk about what it is right now. First, it leverages your team's experience. When your team is doing a confidence score, how likely are we to hit these key results? It's leveraging their experience. It's uncovering underlying assumptions. What you might find is we talk about a key result and I go, yeah, we got it. It's easy. We're going to smash it. And then one of the other team goes, hang on, I don't think this plan's very good, or the data seems to be going the wrong way. All of a sudden, we can see we've got very different assumptions here and we can start to unpack that. And by the way, now that we've uncovered some underlying assumptions, now we can have a bit of positive conflict. Conflict is good within a team. You've got to have that constructive conflict. So it's very powerful. What we typically use is a bit of a range. And I know Profit.co uses this as part of their tool. It's really amazing. Our spreadsheet does a similar sort of thing. Basically, we're talking about from a sort of point scale basis here. So 0.9 to 1 is you're really super confident. You notice that's orange. I'll explain that in a moment. 0.6 to 0.8, that means that we're looking pretty good. We're going to be in a sort of positive zone here. 0.4 to 0.5, it's going to be a real challenge, or 0.3 and below, we're not going to hit this key result. Now, this really helps us have a good discussion. Most OKRs should be a stretch. If you're setting them too low, you're probably sandbagging, right? If you think you're going to hit 100% of your goals, and this can be a little bit of a cultural shift for a lot of people, but if you think you're going to hit all your goals, having a 100% OKR achievement rate is not the best way to do it, because again, people really set goals that they think are safe. You want to build a cultural norm of striving, failing, and learning from your failure and having a bit of experimentation along the way. So this is where 70% is the sweet spot. So if you've got a confidence score around this zone, we're looking pretty good. If you're overly confident, maybe you are going to overshoot your key results and you probably set the bar a little bit too low. And anything down here, again, you want to try and boost that up a little bit. So how do we actually do a confidence score? Well, I'm going to use a bit of an example here. Again, this is ChatGPT that's done some diagrams for us. I went through all sorts of pain and suffering to get this working, so I hope it's helpful. So Steve wants to throw a ball 10 meters high in the air. That's his target, right? For whatever reason, He's a bit weird, and that's just his goal that he's set for himself. He wants to be able to throw this ball 10 meters in the high. Now, without any training, he can throw it 4 meters high, and he feels pretty confident about that. He can do that repetitively. So if I was to say to you, right team, the goal for Steve is to hit it 10 meters, throw it up in 10 meters. By the end of the quarter, with a bit of training, how likely do you think he is? Now, this is a really weird question, right? I've just said that he can throw it 4 meters. How far do you think he'll be able to throw it in the air come the end of the quarter? We're all going to have different ideas here, but roll with me. Drop your thoughts into the Slido poll. Someone thinks 1 meter, so he's going to end up worse off. Someone thinks 7 meters. Okay, so he's probably going to be able to do a bit of training and practice over the quarter. Maybe he can throw it 7 meters high. Everyone else is just unsure. So with this already, we could have a really robust conversation. Whoever voted 1 meter, I could go, okay, so why do you think it's going to go down? Like, what's that for? You know, maybe they think he's telling a fib and it has not even thrown it 4 meters today. Yeah, maybe someone thinks, you know what, over a quarter you can only improve it a little bit. So already you can see the scores are going all over the place. This could be a really useful conversation to have as a team. And obviously we've got lots of assumptions here. I haven't given you much information, but already there's a bit of an interesting pattern happening here, right? There's no right and wrong to this, and unfortunately there isn't some hidden scientific story behind this, but this is really for the purposes of our discussion today. You can see how it's gone. Really what we're talking about there is, if you're a betting person, where do you think Steve's going to be able to throw the ball by the end of the quarter? And that's your confidence score. So if we said, well, you know what, he's going to get to 5 meters. Let's say he can't throw it 4 meters at all. Let's keep the math nice and simple. He can't throw it up at all. He's got a real weak arm. Yeah, he needs to get into the cricket a bit harder. If he can't throw it at all, then he throws at 5 meters. That means he's halfway towards his goal. And so if we thought, well, you know what, by the end of this quarter, we think he can throw it 5 meters high, right? He can't throw it at all, but we think he can get it 5 meters high. Well, that would be a score of 0.5, okay? He's going to get about halfway there. We think maybe that he can do 7. Well, that's going to be a score of 0.7. And if we think he's going to hit the 10, well, that'd be a score of 1. And by the way, if you think he's going to be able to throw it 20 meters, we just score at 1. We don't keep going up on that scale because it's irrelevant. We want to talk about, within a scale, how likely are we to hit our OKR? Now, if we can think about this with sales, right? If I had to make $100,000 worth of sales in a quarter, or maybe it's monthly sales of $100,000, and at the moment we're at 0, be a pretty bad month. Well, what we could say is, okay, getting $50,000 would be a score of 0.5. So if we think by the end of the quarter, we're going to have 50,000 rather than the 100,000 target, my confidence score would be a 0.5. And so it's really just, if you're a betting person, where do you expect it to land? What percentage of the goal do you think we'll achieve? I love this here. Is this about the law of probability? Absolutely, to a large degree. What we're doing is we're leveraging our experience. And again, it talks a little bit about, I guess, in this one here, this is probably more strength-based. You know, if you're getting good at something, you can probably do it. There's a random risk that they're going to hurt themselves and not going to be able to throw it any higher. But definitely, it's based on your experience. How likely do you think this is? And if we're thinking about, okay, I want to generate, again, let's say 100 new leads. If I'm a marketing professional and I know on LinkedIn, if I post 3 times a week, I'm going to get about 1 lead a week. And therefore, I can start to add that up and go, okay, well, clearly over 12 weeks, that's only 12 leads. So that's not going to get me to the 100. So my confidence would be very low. And I'd go, okay, so that's effectively a confidence of close enough to 0.1. So I would then go, okay, well, we need to go back to the drawing board. Maybe we need to pay for some leads, so we're going to put ads up and try and see if we get a certain number of leads that way. So there's all these different things you can try to do to try and get there. So it is a little bit about the law of probability, but it's based on your experience and learning is the key way to frame it. Really good question though. So that is confidence scoring in a nutshell. I like to do it as a team. We do it live. So some people like to fill out these tools beforehand. Others would like to do it in person. I'm the sort of person who likes to do it in person. You've got to work out what's your cup of tea, what works for you. Now it says here, but if we cannot score our OKR with a full 1 score, did we define it correctly as our OKR in the first place? I believe business achievements are a bit solid in the nature. This is where I disagree with you. It depends on what you mean by a business result. So if I want to increase conversion rate, unless I have a really large amount of data that says the reason your conversion rate low is for this specific reason, then we don't really know. We might have insights. Customers say to us, yeah, look, I just didn't see the value in it. Or I went to another competitor because they've got a better deal. There's all these sort of things. Now, the old classic would be if you've got a product and you say, look, how much would you be willing to pay for this product? If you just ask that flat out question, they'll say, oh, look, it's a great product, $20, cool. Could I have $20? Not right now, no, sorry. So having data that actually really talks about the outcome and the impact we're trying to make is very, very hard. Where it can be easier is if it's a plan to do something, and that's what a good OKR typically isn't. It's not to do something. So launch a new version of our app. That would not be a good OKR or a good key result. It's what you call binary, because we launched the app, but so what? I learned this the hard way. I worked on one of Australia's first apps that was done, one of the first iOS apps here, back in sort of around 2007, 2008. And our goal was launch the app. And we launched it, and it was an absolute fireball. It did not go well at all. We course corrected it quickly thereafter, but it was not good. So just trying to do the thing isn't what we're trying to achieve here. It's about the impact or the outcome. I hope that answers your question, by the way, but feel free to challenge me more or seek further clarification. Okay, let's do this, team. We're going to land this plane now, and then we're going to jump into a Q&A. So last few things here. What we've got here is this is a template I use. It's basically, talks about the progress since last time, focus for the week ahead, any of the confidence scores and those sort of things. So, that's a really simple way to capture it. You can create your own. You can have our template. Again, the QR code at the end will give you that. This is fine to get started, but you want to jump onto profit.co and use their tool, if you're going to be doing this longer term. So, again, one of the success patterns, use a tool, capture something, whether it's a spreadsheet, just have it written down somewhere. Don't just talk about your OKRs and actually record this stuff anywhere and have any way to track it. You can even at least see with the spreadsheet, you can track your history of your confidence scores. Profit.co will do a much better job of that. But, again, you can see that history. Do it properly. Break down your project. So back to that point I was just making. Don't do what I did back in 2007. And right, we're just going to launch the app and that's going to be it. Because while you're going through your check-ins, you're going to be able to talk about, okay, yeah, we're making progress, we're this percentage completed, but you don't actually know how it's going to go once you're done. What we should have done is we should have done a basic version of the app. Maybe it would have been, I think I can probably talk about this now. This is a long time ago. It was for Australia Post, so our postal organization. We could have just done like a mobile website, something basic like that, that maybe captured feedback or gave some basic information, something that was quick and dirty, got it out there. And then we could start to add on additional features like parcel tracking, post office locations, all these sort of things. We could have done that. And that's where you come into these little increments, or big increments, I should say here, that's delivering chunks of value rather than getting to the end of the quarter. And believe me, I see people do this all the time. Don't get to the end of the quarter and just drop whatever you're doing. And again, this applies to people teams. If you're doing training, you got some sort of training program. Let's say you want to do a leadership training program. I know people teams that have done this for 6 months. They've come up with some sort of really incredible big leadership training program. It covers everything from 101s to onboarding to all this other great stuff. And it just flops. Versus the people teams who go, right, what's our biggest problem to solve right now? We know our team members are just not happy with the leadership that they get. Okay, let's focus on one-on-ones. Let's focus on career coaching and these sort of things for leaders. And so very first thing we might do is let's do a training module on one-on-ones. How do you do a great one-on-one with a small set of leaders from this particular part of the business? That's a small increment of value. Test it out. How did it go? They loved it, worked really well. Their team members loved it. Okay, great. Let's roll that now out through the business. So all of a sudden you're seeing all this value coming in. If you do it really well, you focus on the big things up front. Now your check-ins should be making sure not only are we actually delivering value as we go, not getting to this one over here where we're just going bang and hoping for the best, but actually driving that value if you do it really well, we're focusing on those key points of differentiation, the biggest bits of value that we can deliver nice and early, so that, okay, one-on-ones is the absolute worst thing. Well, bang, let's do that. By the time you get over here, maybe it's email etiquette. Sure, we can do a course on that for leaders. Is it going to change the game like one-on-ones? Probably not, but it's still valuable to do, and you can continue the quarter like that. So it's all about how we deliver value. I want to talk a little bit about Redbubble and how they did this. They were not sure how familiar with you they might be. Very big in the States. They're an Australian business, so it's this really strange picture. Very big in the States, and what they do is they basically get images printed on mugs. So they make it look really nice, and buy all these great products, and you can get, it's usually artists will upload their works. Through their check-ins, they had a big target of actually trying to embed a new payment platform. And their check-ins, they were getting together and they're going, look, this is actually a lot harder than we thought. The more they got into it, they realized the amount of back office processing. If they want to add in a new payment option, being Amazon Payment Gateway, they were realizing just it was going to be really complicated. So they decided to do a small test. It's called a painted door test. What they did was they agreed on the Monday morning during their weekly check-in, let's do a quick test. We're going to add a button in the checkout flow and see if anyone clicks on it. So for a small portion of their audience, they added an Amazon checkout button. It had PayPal, credit card, Amazon. Now, what they found was people who would normally click through, there was no click-through change on the PayPal or the credit card. That was all very normal. But all of a sudden, there's a bunch of people who would normally drop out. They would actually try and click on the Amazon button. A little spinner would come up and say, whoops, sorry, not available. They'd track that event, and then they would know, okay, clearly those people want this product. And that helped them justify, yeah, this is actually the right thing for us to do. And they continued doing that sort of work. Every check-in, they talk about how do we just add a little bit more value. By the end of the quarter, they implemented the full payment gateway. So that's where you can really use these things. Last couple of slides, and then we're going to jump into a Q&A because I know we're at time. Really, where you get the biggest impact from the weekly check-in and OKRs in general is creating a winning culture. And there's a simple habit that's not actually part of the check-in that you can do that can actually help you be really successful though for your check-in. And first, it's what we call the Friday wins, right? It's a simple habit. At the end of your week in Teams or Slack or whatever you use, drop in a comment into the team channel around what are some of the key wins you've had this week, key achievements. They can be personal, they can be business, they can be whatever you want. Hopefully they're tied to OKRs, at least some of them. Now, don't make it complicated, don't make it formal, nice and informal. Drop those in at the end of the week, comment and celebrate together. That way, when you get together on your check-in on the Monday, you can have a really great conversation around, okay, well, here's all the stuff we did. You've already got a sort of digested list of stuff that you've done, and you build that sign of celebration. Next, give thanks. Always thank your teammates. The check-in is a really good time to do that, giving that real-time active feedback. Thank you for this is what you've done. Thank you for being helpful. A word of note around that is teams don't leave because they're disengaged in a organization. They are typically disengaged with a manager. One simple hack to make your team more engaged is by offering thanks. So again, your weekly impact is the time to do that. Now, I want to land this plane. I've talked about this to death, so I'm going to skip through these. What are my key takeaways here for you? Avoid the 4 sins of OKR indifference. Meet with your team weekly. Cover the 3 topics. What have you done over the past week? How do the numbers move? What's your confidence? What's the plan for the week ahead? And are there any blockers getting in the way? And increase how your teams inquire and think about their work. I'm curious. We're going to do a Q&A in just a moment, and hopefully that Q&A actually might already be active. You can see it in Slido. But what's everyone's key takeaway from today? What's the number one thing that you're going to walk away and do off the back of this session? Let's do a little bit more music just to land this puppy. How to drive team check-ins, perfect. if you do have any questions, team, feel free, once you've gotten what you're walking away with today, you can drop it into the chat or look at the Q&A. The confidence score, it really is a game changer for me. Driving check-ins is the other point. Love it. Yeah, it is amazing. The recording of the session. Sassy, can we do a recording of the session? I think we can get that out.
Yeah. So we'll get the recording of the session.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Let's see. I think we're good for some Q&A now, team. I'll keep an eye on this. My key takeaway is to be actionable, create a winning culture. Yes, please. I like the one-on-one TGR for the leaders and managers. Yes. I joined in the middle of the meeting, and to the extent I attended, winning culture and check-ins were key catches to me. I'm great. I'm glad that you got there. Check out the recording. There's some good stuff at the start. All right, we'll see this last one, and then we'll carry on to the Q&A. Okay, we're gonna let it go. I'm sure it would have been valuable, but I do want to make sure we close the time. In fact, I can see the Q&A here, so let me start while that person finishes. Here we go. So interesting, we need to know more as how we define OKRs from business level to departments. Oh, that's such a big topic. My suggestion would be you can jump onto YouTube and search OKR Quick Start. We've got a whole bunch of stuff, how to run an OKR workshop, how to align OKRs. Check out some of those videos. I'm going to share my contact details in a moment as well. Feel free to reach out to me and I can send it to you because, yeah, how to define OKRs and that sort of stuff, that's a webinar series in itself. Any other comments or questions? Well, I don't know what I did there. That's a bit random.
So there are a couple of questions that we got via email.
Cool.
So one of the persons, like, he asked, so what if we have people from multiple teams working on one particular OKR? Like, who leads the OKR check-in and when do they actually meet?
That's it's a really good question. So when it's just your team, it's a lot easier. If you've got multiple people, what I like to do is work out an agreed time that loosely fits into one of the team's check-ins. So normally you'll find there's a team that is sort of primarily focused on this OKR and there's other teams that support it or other individuals. So what we typically do is we say, right, get together on your OKR check-in, and that can be at the start of your team meeting. Have everyone attend that. And then once you've gone through that, everyone else can kind of drop off at that point if they're just there for the OKR check-in rather than the full team meeting. That's been my go-to and it seems to work pretty well. Otherwise, you might want to get like a semi-regular cadence, a bi-weekly, every 2 weeks get together. That can be the other way to play it. But yeah, avoid additional meetings.
Okay, got it. So other thing like, what if one of the team members doesn't agree with the confidence score? Like what to do that in that situation? And one more question is like what if one particular team in a company gives a different way of confidence score, and what if other team gives like overall confidence score of the company? How does it affect?
That's okay. So 2 really cool questions there. So I'd say if team members disagree, I always look at the assumptions that they've got, and then we go, okay, if those are reasonable assumptions, like if someone says, oh, I just disagree, it's a 0.4. It's not very good reason, right? But if you've actually got a really good reason for it, I'll always go for the lower score. So that's how I typically do it. If there's a good argument, and even if 2 people say, well, I'm at a 0.4 because X, Y, and Z, and someone else is a 0.7, I'll always go for the 0.4. Presuming again that person that isn't going 0.4 is just like, well, I think it's a 0.4, and that's what I'm staying at. That's a bit ridiculous. In terms of how different teams can do it, I'm more concerned about the teams being able to use it and understand it. Ultimately, in some businesses, it is good to have a common language. And so you've got to look at your own sort of culture as an organization and go, what do we value? Do we value people just using something that works for them, or is it better to have a common language for us? And it really does vary between different organizations. My thing is sort of, let a thousand blossoms bloom and just see what works. Because again, even if you do have a standardized method, every team will have their own minor interpretation of it. You see other organizations, again, for tech teams, you might have heard where people want to have like standardized story points and these sort of things. You get into this funky sort of territory. So I like to keep it a bit flexible. But again, if your organization is a bit more structure and likes to have that common language, that's fine. It is what's really important is it visible for those above that you have a low confidence and therefore can offer support? So low confidence is a really positive sign. If teams share a low confidence score, that's a really good thing. And the question is then, how does the organization help that team if they've got a low confidence?
Okay.
By the way,
So
team, just if you want to get some of our how-to guides, we've got a book on how to implement OKRs quickly. You can use that QR code, get straight into it. You can reach out to me at that email address and have a bit of a chat too. If you want some of those YouTube videos, drop me an email there and I can send them through to you.
okay, that's great to know. And we'll take one last question. So here we have a question like, have you faced a resistance when introducing weekly check-ins, and how do you get team to buy in?
So surprisingly often there's initial, what, we need to check in on this weekly. That comes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is, does the team see the value in the OKR, or is there something else that's getting in the way of them being able to focus on it? Because again, if they're too busy to focus on their OKRs, what you're talking about there is like a symptom. And so I think it's a really good question because they're picking up on a symptom that the team is not engaging on the OKRs. The next question is why not, and how do we help them solve for that? And that could be, again, it could be, well, they're over capacity, therefore we need to do some continuous improvement work to try and get them some time back to focus on the OKRs. Or maybe the OKR is the wrong OKR and therefore they just, it's not worth them doing and everyone agrees, well, that's a bad idea. So probably need to go back to the drawing board. Or they're just not behind it. And if they're not behind it, well, okay, how do we get them behind it? And usually there's good reasons for them not being behind it. So it's a bit of a journey you got to go on.
Okay, that's great to know, Tim. So, so for all the participants, like you can write down your questions to hello at okay@quickstart.com. Reach out to Tim via LinkedIn for your questions. Also, for people who have stayed this long, so there's a free trial account for you in Profit.co that you can trial for 30 days, where you can practice check-in and how it works for your team. Okay. So thank you so much for this wonderful session, Tim, and thank you all for joining with us. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
That's great.
Bye.
I just want to say thanks to everyone. I know it's a big amount of time out of your day, and just kudos to all of you for coming along and trying to make things better. You're all amazing. So have an epic rest of your day.